So as I said, our process will be, first of all, just asking you what you see are some of the really big issues you're facing. So if you'd like to talk about that for a few minutes, we'd appreciate it.
Sure, thank you. And also, I just want to get a time check. I'm just here. I don't know how long we're going.
Well,
What's
we've
our
set
plan?
an hour.
Okay.
I know that's a lot of your time, but that's what we would like.
Okay. Well, if you get bored, we can end early. So
Well, sure.
no judgment. I won't take it personally.
And let me say, as the group gets bigger, if you have questions to ask, and we'll go to questions, I'm hoping at about 20 minutes after we start. If you have questions, please write into the chat, I have a question. Because as we get more people, it's really hard to see hands up and everything. So Colette will be monitoring the chat. And if she sees that Carolyn has a question, for example, she'll say, Carolyn, please ask us your question. So that's how I'll handle questions. Okay, thank you again.
Okay, I'll just start with a brief intro. So I'm Christine Rolfes. I think I'm a member of the league. I pay my dues. I don't remember if I paid them this year. I get threatening letters every once in a while saying, are you still a member? Do you want to pay? But it's an honor to talk with you all. And I really appreciate the work that you all do countywide and statewide. I am the state senator. I live on Bainbridge Island, represent the 23rd legislative district, and that area is East Bremerton, north to Hansville. And then I just picked up a little bit of West Bremerton with Olympic College, or downtown Bremerton, I guess you would say. So that's a small group of people that I don't know very well, but that I will get to know shortly. I've been in the Senate since 2011. And so I'm one of the more senior members of the group. People ask me a lot about term limits and whether I think there should be term limits. And you should know the average life expectancy of a state senator is 8 years and of a House member is 5. So I've been in for my 11th year, I think, maybe 10th full year. And I'm one of the more senior members of the state Senate. So that just tells you it's kind of a healthy turnover. I'm the chair of the budget committee, and I got that job probably because of my involvement with public school education funding and the work that I did on that. That's half the state budget. And so it was natural to just kind of assume responsibility for the other half. But I've been doing that job as chair of the budget committee since the Democrats got the majority.
I want to make sure I'm on mute.
There you go. I've been doing that job since 2018. So this is my 5th year as the budget chair. And then I'm also on the Senate's Agriculture Natural Resources Committee. So I'm very knowledgeable about environmental and natural resource issues, very knowledgeable about the budget. And then I'm as knowledgeable as any other senator on other stuff that you want to talk about. But those are my 2 areas of focus. So one of the questions was, what are the most important items on the legislative agenda? And I'm going to just take a shortcut because it's the usual thing, sadly. We're still working on affordable housing and homelessness. We're still focusing on improving the state's behavioral health system. And we always have public school issues on our agenda. But for me, the overriding issue right now is the ferry system and making sure that the legislators around the state and our transportation chairs are 100% committed to getting the system built back up and getting us our service back. And that I think I can speak for all the members of the Ferry Caucus that we've just been devastated by I'm going to just say the system failure of the ferry system over the last year. So at first it was about COVID, and now I'm just not sure. They just haven't been able to pull it together. It's not a funding issue at this point. They have the funding to provide the service. It's a personnel issue. They don't have the staff. And at this point, there's not much the legislature can do except make sure they have the funding to hire the staff and pay the overtime and get the system back on its feet. And then we are also committed to the capital replacement program, building new boats and making sure the terminals are safe and modernized over the next 10 years. So the ferry system is literally the biggest priority I have right now. And the anxiety and stress of the ridership is I haven't really experienced that kind of anxiety that's very district specific since I first got elected. So we're working on that. Then the other issue that I think is really important, that's, I wouldn't say new on the scene, but we seem to have a more focused effort on it, is building for climate resilience. And I think the disasters, that like continuous natural disasters that we have been having, help raise that to the forefront, whether it's wildfires or flooding. There's parts of the state that have just been destroyed. And a lot of that is climate change and climate activity. And it's not just important. I think our state is a national leader, international leader in reducing climate pollution, and policies and regulations to keep the air clean and do our part. But the disaster response and building in resilience has become really critical. And I think the legislature is moving away from fighting about whether climate change is real, and we can all get on board with helping people and making sure that we're reducing the need for disaster assistance and reducing disasters. So that is really taking up a leading place in the conversations that we're having in Olympia. And I'm in the middle of that. And then we're also on another environmental front. The governor is really leading on salmon restoration and using some of the reserves that we have to up our game on bringing back salmon and restoring and protecting salmon habitat. So the fish conversations are always complicated, and we're having discussions right now on how best to invest resources in salmon recovery and salmon habitat protection. So those are some of the bigger things, I'd say. Salmon, disasters, and the ferry system. How's that? And then we just had hearings. We just finished our Ways and Means Committee at 6:45 today, and we just had hearings on a portfolio of bills to stabilize the K-12 system. So they've not just been dealing with COVID and teacher and staff stress and all the things that have come about over the last 2 years. But additionally, there's been a 5% drop in enrollment statewide from the public school system. And it's not clear whether, some of that is demographic, but it's not clear whether that's people holding their kids back from kindergarten just to keep them home because of COVID, or people keeping their kids home because of COVID, or people not sending their kids to school because they don't like the, sex education being taught in the schools. We had a robust hearing on why the enrollment may have dropped, but the fact is that our school funding is based on enrollment. And so the schools are going to be seeing significant budget declines next year because the enrollment has gone down, and we don't want them cutting right now, right when we need them beefing things up. So we're going to be sorting through that over the next couple of weeks, how to stabilize the system, but acknowledge that times have changed, that enrollment may not be coming back, but what do we do? So I'll just stop my opening remarks with that. There's always challenges for us to work on. Oh, before I open it up to questions, I'll say the good news is it looks like the bill to make pickleball the state sport is moving forward. And it's like the bright spot in the day. Whenever that bill comes up, everybody talks about pickleball and everybody's really excited to do something positive. So I'm hoping that'll at least get out of the Senate.
Good. Our next general question is, where are we in the budget process now in this session, and how is this going?
Yeah, so we're on week 4. The budget itself, I should know.
Yeah.
But the budget will get released towards the end of February. So we're about halfway through. And what's interesting about this budget year is that we have more revenue than we thought we were going to have last year when we created the 2-year budget. So we were given numbers in November that were about, I'm going to say $5 billion more this year than we thought we were going to have, $11 billion over a 4-year planning cycle. So we have the budget responsibilities that you normally have the first year of a 2-year budget cycle. We're looking this year at what do we do with that kind of revenue? And so that comes with the same fights that you have, that we should have had last year, which are, do we cut taxes? Where do we invest? Do we save it? Do we pay off debt? What do you do with that? So we're facing all of those discussions, but we only have 60 days to make those decisions. So we're about halfway through picking through the details.
Okay. One of our constant questions as league members is, what can we do to help you and your issues specifically? Do you have things we should pay attention to and do?
Yeah, well, it's always, I mean, the emails are always helpful. I saw Carrie West get on, and she and we've exchanged a couple of emails recently. It's really helpful to members, I think, to just get the emails, the personal emails. Catherine knows this. Catherine famously emails me live, although you haven't done it yet this session, Catherine, so I hope you're not getting bored. But just getting the emails saying, you know, even if it's just at a girl, but in Carrie's situation, I know we were just writing about a growth management bill that she was interested in. But that kind of one-on-one input from people is really helpful. And especially when people have wisdom to offer about it, like the reason that you're interested in it is this. On a very base level, I think you all know how to follow bills, and you know, so just tracking and letting us know where things are that you think are important is helpful. And then I have a newsletter, and I try not to overplay it. It probably comes out every couple of weeks, and I try to have a couple things I'm working on and then some like news you can use in there. And so that's a place, it's not partisan. I'm very careful. I think about half the people subscribe to it are critics. And so I try to send stuff out that is not raw Democrat, but is just factual about things that I'm working on and that are important to our area. So
How does one get access to that newsletter?
you have to subscribe to it yourself. It is not legal. It's not ethical for me to subscribe you to. But if you go on my website, there's a button you can click to subscribe. And then whenever I respond to an email with my like letterhead, there's a link on there. So I think people sign themselves up when they see that part of it. I don't even know who's on my newsletter list. They won't show us that.
Okay, do you have more general comments, or shall I turn it over to you, Colette?
Yeah, the first person who asked us to ask a question was Lenny.
I have actually a set of questions, but I'm only going to do one bunch at the beginning.
We'll come around to you again.
Right. I'm going to do some healthcare questions. Most of you know I'm married to a retired neonatologist, Bob here, who is also a league member and is listening in tonight because we always like to hear what the senator has to say. The bill we're most concerned about right now is in the Senate, 5688, which you, I think, are a co-sponsor of. It's Senator Randall's bill, Keep Our Care Act.
Oh.
And it has not, I don't know what Senator Dinga is doing, but she's not had an exec session in Law and Justice. So do you know what's up with this bill?
It's 5688?
Yeah.
Huh. I don't know why it got sent there, actually. I do not know.
Well, it's because of the law impacts of giving the Attorney General the power to weigh in on mergers. And
yeah, I was thinking that it went to healthcare, and I thought I thought that it had a hearing based on my email. So I don't know.
Yeah, it has had a hearing, but we're kind of worried about it because it needs to be voted out, or you will never get it on the floor in the Senate. And
the problem, it had a public hearing a couple weeks ago. The problem is that we are a unique part of the state in that we are under a monopoly for our healthcare, and much of the rest of the state is not. So the more rural that the state is, they have public health districts. So they have their own, or public hospital districts. They have public hospitals, or you're Seattle or Tacoma, you have options.
Mhm.
And so we don't, it's kind of like the ferry system. It's hard to explain to legislators why this matters because they can't picture it.
Mhm. Well, I can tell you the other areas that care: Whatcom County, Jefferson County, Clallam County.
And I know the San Juan Islands have,
Yeah, well, they
they
have
have the health care shortage. Yeah.
yeah, they have a public hospital district. But anyway, we're really very concerned about that. And I can tell you that anything we can do, and maybe you can, I see Jennifer's on, so I bet she's taking notes.
Oh, I didn't know Jennifer was on. Hi, Jennifer.
Anyway, if we can kind of see what's going on with that, because it's going to be too late to move it in the House, even though there is a companion bill, but they have not done hearings and stuff. And then the other healthcare things are coming out of the House that I want to put on your radar. One is the affirming the abortion care that we have in Washington State. That's 1851 for you and for Jennifer both. And 1616, which is Representative Tara Simmons' bill on charity care. Both of those will get out of the House. Tara will see to that. And 1141, which is expanding the death with dignity stuff, has again passed the House. It passed last year and got stuck in the Senate, and it may have gotten stuck in Ways and Means. I cannot remember, but we're pretty concerned about those bills in particular, with this restricted access to health care on reproductive issues and end of life issues here in Kitsap County. So if you could put all those on your radar, and if you know anything about 1141, which is back over to the Senate now, just passed last week.
All right, so I'm not as good. I don't really know what's going on in the House. I don't look at the House bills till they come to the Senate. So I can't really give you an update on most of the House bills that you listed. But the 1141, the Death with Dignity bill, I don't know how that's been changed, but the reason it got stuck in the Senate was because in the Senate, the disability rights organizations expressed concern about making it too easy for people with disabilities for family members to make those choices for people with disabilities. And that made the conversation kind of morally hazard, and there was uncertainty about how you get around it. If this bill's sponsor has addressed that, which I think that was the plan, was for him to work with the disability rights organizations, then that bill should have a different path in the Senate. And it wasn't about the Senate versus the House. It was that the disability issues didn't come up in the House. They came up in the Senate, which is part of the process, right? You go through two chambers in order to give everybody time to kill stuff.
Right. Well, I think it's one of the few bipartisan bills that you'll see this year. It is a bipartisan bill. The main.
Well, it's probably one of the few bipartisan bills that's controversial. We have a lot of bipartisan bills that they're usually not controversial, but that the sponsor of that bill did a good job, the Republican sponsor. Jennifer is here. She's my new legislative assistant, my new executive assistant. If you ever worked with Linda Owens, Jennifer, she retired and Jennifer is helping me. And she has said, there she is. I haven't seen Jennifer since this morning. She has said she could put the link to my newsletter in the chat if that is useful for people. So.
I was going to say, excuse me, when each of you speaks on a bill or bills that you're highly knowledgeable about, please spend a little more time defining or describing that bill or those bills for those of us who are not as knowledgeable as you. So not just a couple of words, but the bill that focuses on the end of life issues or something like that. So thank
Yeah,
you.
and I don't know if you saw me looking away, it's because I was looking up the bills as she was calling out the numbers so I could try to track what the bills were, so.
Yeah, so a little more description or definition of the bills. Colette?
So Catherine All, you had a question? You might want to check to make sure you're not on mute.
Okay, I had a question, but I also want all of you to know, and I am still stalking you, Christine, just so you know.
Maybe I don't need as much help as I used to.
The Christine started a hearing, well, first executive session where they voted out bills, and then hearings on like 7 bills. She started at 4 o'clock this afternoon. She wasn't finished until 6:45. I was with you the whole time, Christine.
Ah,
And I hurried up and ate something, and now I've got my gin and tonic, so I'm fine. But to the league, the most important bills this year are the ones dealing with social, physical, social, and emotional. And you had the hearing on 5595. That is so critical. Our kids are hurting and they need the support in their schools.
Can you
So
just
they can-
briefly describe 5595?
Yes, it would provide more social, emotional, and physical staff. So more nurses, more counselors, more social workers, because right now there aren't enough of those. There's a prototypical school model, which just gives, like North Kitsap has like 1 nurse or something. And I've heard a parent say, well, I've told my child that if they're going to get sick at school, get sick on Wednesday between 11 and 12, because that's the only time the nurse is there. So we need more of this support staff in order to help our kids, which are hurting more than ever because of COVID and the whole result of that. So it's a bill that would increase the number in the prototypical school model, which hasn't been updated since 2010, and would provide more social workers, counselors, nurses, that sort of thing. And so, Christine, I just want you to know that this is a league priority, and it's one that I keep touting during our legislative newsletter. So I'm hoping it will pass. I know it's a lot of money, but you know what? If we give up on our kids, we're done.
the just for people's information who aren't as schooled in this as Catherine is, the state currently gives school districts 0.1, a little less than 0.1 school nurse per elementary school. So 1/10 of a person per elementary school, and high school 0.1 per high school. So if you have 10 high schools in your school district, we pay for 1 nurse. And so, and that when we were doing McCleary, we knew that was too low. Same horrible ratios for social workers and psychologists and all the other categories that Catherine was talking about. So when we did McCleary, we knew that that was not funded, but McCleary had to be bipartisan, and we could not get the Republicans to say that school nurses and guidance counselors were part of basic education. So we're now at a place where we have funding available, and we have political support to get the funding up there. So the bill that we were hearing today still doesn't fix the problem, but it does make it a part-time school nurse, a half of a nurse per elementary school, and then almost 1 full nurse for the high schools and middle schools. So it gets the funding up. At least you can staff at those levels. So that was the bill. I also think it's one of the most important education investments we can make for the reasons that you said, Catherine. And I hope I can get it out of my committee, but I intend to budget for it, and we'll see where that ends up.
Right. And the other bill is the 5563. And that's the
Budget, that's the stabilization bill.
enrollment stabilization
Yeah.
funding. And I was amazed when I looked on it, how many people were opposed to it. But as far as those testifying, there were only two and one was the conservative ladies of Washington, which are opposed to everything. But I don't know why so many people are opposed to that. And I don't know if you do either.
Yeah, it's I mentioned the school enrollment is down, and the conservative viewpoint on that is it's because parents don't trust the schools anymore, not about COVID, but about things like sex education or social emotional learning, or they call it critical race theory. That's not actually taught in the schools, but it's become a conservative talking point. And so it's really social issues. And so they believe that the kids are not enrolled because the schools are too liberal, and therefore the liberal schools need to get punished essentially for the kids not being enrolled. So we'll figure it out.
Okay.
But that was why there were like 2,000, last night there were 1,200 people who signed in opposed. And then somebody got the word out, and then 700 people signed in pro. And so it became kind of a sign-in war.
And it's amazed how different groups are organized. There's another one that's in the House, sponsored by Representative Hansen, which would eliminate open carry laws at school board meetings, city council meetings, county council meetings, that sort of thing. There's a different one in the Senate that would allow local governmental agencies to set standards that they want. And I'm thinking maybe that's the compromise. Not to mandate that they can't carry open carry it.
But to allow them to do it.
But
Yeah,
allow to make that decision locally.
yeah, I mean, personally, I'm starting to think that's the way that we need to be going with gun safety laws. But we'll see. The state law precludes local governments from making their own laws on that.
Okay.
So
I'm going to jump
So
in
that's
for
what-
just a minute for
Yeah.
those people who are newly arrived. To
Exactly.
say that please, if you want to ask a question, put in the chat, just I'd like to ask a question, and then Colette will call on you. So Colette?
Yeah, I think we need to move to Carrie West, and then it'll be Caroline, and then Anita.
Thank you so much, Christine, for being here. I really appreciate you. And I wanted to know if you're working on plastics
Mhm.
in the Senate.
Yes, I am. Do you mean me personally or the Senate in general?
Senate.
Yes, we have the bill. I don't remember the number. I'm going to say 5297, but that's probably not right. It is a bill I'm co-sponsoring related to requiring packaging producers to producers of packaging, manufacturers of packaging, to be responsible for taking back their own waste. And there's lots of different moving aspects of that bill. It started out big, it's getting smaller, but I'm hopeful that as it's supposed to move out of the Environment Committee this week, and it should keep us on the path moving forward on plastics recycling and reducing plastics and packaging.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's been a priority for me for a few years.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Carolyn?
Hi, Senator Rolfes, thank you for your time. My name's Carolyn Berger. I live on Bainbridge. I'm actually wanting to talk to you about redistricting, and you mentioned the changes to the 23rd. The league provided training sessions and listening sessions so that people could understand the redistricting process and figure out how to participate. It was very exciting to watch. It was like democracy in action. And then we tuned into the end of November and the final meeting of the commission. And there was a blank screen and it got delayed and there was no final conclusion. And so all those months of work by the commission and all the citizen testimony, it was hard to watch that happen. There are now two bills, SB 5560 and SB 5583 that are in the Senate Rules Committee. 5560 is the one that more broadly looks at transparency and timing and the submission process. And then 5583 is more about prison gerrymandering, making sure that people are counted where they come from and not where they are at the prison. But I am here today to sort of look ahead and talk about more broadly because the league has looked at this over the last year. And one of the things that we've concluded after the past few months is that we need to have comprehensive redistricting reform. And I am wondering if you might be a contact for us after the session, because I know how crazy busy it is right now, but we want to set the redistricting commission up for success the next time. And just wondering if we could contact you after session to participate in the discussion.
Definitely.
Okay, and there are a lot of different topics that are potentially part of this. There's the transparency part. We've also talked about, should we possibly have citizens on the commission that aren't part of either political party? Is there any specific area or just sort of generally part of the discussion?
I don't know about, I don't think you can find citizens who aren't biased. And so you might as well just leave it the way it is with two, equal Democrat and Republican and somebody neutral to, I mean, that's just my personal bias. But I do think there's, and I could be wrong about that too. But the law was passed and the process was set up before like an online world where everybody can participate and listen.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
It's worth taking a look at in 10 years, what do you want to be doing in this different world?
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Easy.
I appreciate that. And yeah, we'll work it out so we can contact you after session. And I'm just a really quick aside. I promise Colette and Delight, it'll be quick. I just wanted to say thank you for 5878 on visual arts and performing arts funding. That is just, it's fabulous. I saw it in the newsletter and I hope we can get that through to it would be wonderful.
It got watered down a little bit. I haven't nailed down what happened to it. It got passed with an amendment that I knew they were going to amend it, but it was on Friday and I didn't pay attention to it. But it reiterated the importance of arts education in the public schools, and whether it's watered down or not, if I can keep it moving, I want to, because I want legislators to hear people talking about how important that is.
And it really will deal with inequities. I mean, because in wealthier districts, this is all, we've got more resources and we're able to make it happen, but there are other districts where the arts are the first, it's always the first thing to go, but it goes first in districts that have less money.
Well, and the quality, right? The districts can have a theater and they can have instruments and all that. Yeah.
So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's a part of a bigger conversation. It'll take a little while, I think. But thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, we'll do our part.
Thanks.
Anita?
On this, I just wanted to go back to what Catherine Alla was talking about, the nurses. I have a friend who's a school nurse over in North Shore, And she's the only nurse for her school. And so there's a huge difference between the schools. And so obviously they've subsidized her position, but before it was pretty intense. Now she's resigning because it's over the board, and it's a one nurse per school situation. So just be aware that it's not across the board. Some schools are being very generous. And then other schools, her parents seem to be fine, but other schools, there are parents that come in and rip the faces off of nurses because she tells the parents that, hey, there was in football or basketball, someone got COVID and they'll have to quarantine. And it's really monstrous. So just putting that in there.
Yeah, I mean, the timing of having no school nurse funding and COVID is horrendous, right? That's so it makes it an easier conversation about we need school nurses, that's for sure. But if you know a school nurse or you see a school nurse in an actual school, they're paid for with levy funds. They're not the states, that it's the communities paying for school nurses right now.
Lenny, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on Carolyn's comments about redistricting. Susan Griggs and I ran the Speak Up School here in Kitsap County, and it was so much fun. It was really interesting to see all the enthusiasm and so forth. And so I'm going to make a special plea, Senator Rolfes. I will contact you after this session, along with my friend Sam Hunt, who I knew when I lived in Yakima, and his mother was the grande dame of the Yakima County Democrats. She recently passed away, as some of you may know, right after Christmas, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, Deb was a wonderful woman, and Sam is a great legislator. But we are really going to ask to stand up a commission to look at redistricting reform, because I watched at least as much as Carolyn did, and was shocked at the really very partisan nature, and the fact that we had no way of knowing, the thing that troubled us the most, we had no way of knowing if all the work we did to train people to testify and get people to testify had any impact at all, because they didn't reveal any of their negotiations with one another. And I'm sorry, but as long as it's really so bipartisan and not nonpartisan, we've got problems. And I want to be following what Michigan is doing, what California is doing. I don't know that anybody's got a perfect system yet, but we're definitely not there. And we would love to have a study commission. And so we're going to be following up on that with you, and hopefully with Senator Hunt as well, because it really was very disappointing.
That's fine. I'd be interested in what other states are doing too. I know we're one of the better states, but if another state has figured it out, you know, I'm totally fine. So.
Light, you had a question.
Yes, I'm deeply concerned about House Bill 1782 and Senate Bill 5670. These are the bills that are saying that they will get rid of single-family housing zoning in cities. For Bainbridge, this is a major problem, because while Bainbridge is largely rural, it is defined as a city, and that means the possibility of having tremendous large developments all over our island, with no infrastructure, inadequate roads, no sewer system in much of the island, et cetera. So where is that? What can we do to stop it for places like this that are defined as cities but aren't?
Well, I started seeing those emails coming in today to Drew and Tara, so I would keep that push on. The House bill has more momentum than the Senate bill at this point. For folks who aren't familiar, it's actually a really big deal. It's state, it would eliminate single family zoning statewide in cities greater than 10,000 people. And for anyone who's been involved in growth management planning over the last 30 years, it completely destroys all of the planning that the cities have been doing since the Growth Management Act was passed. So legislators are like really in love with this idea. The urban core, like this Tacoma, Seattle, Olympia, Everett folks think this is a great idea. And then the Republicans think it's a great idea because it kind of eliminates a lot of regulations. And so it's this kind of unholy alliance. And the governor is really excited about it. And it's really, unless you've been engaged in local land use planning, you don't know really what the impact, the huge impact of this could be. Bainbridge seems to see it really clearly. I know the mayor of Poulsbo is very concerned about what it would do to Poulsbo in terms of the work she's been doing, trying to zone there. I haven't heard from Bremerton, but I know that Poulsbo and Bainbridge elected leaders were very concerned. So all you can do really is, I'm not for either one of them. I've told the sponsors I will never vote for them. Like there's nothing you can do that would make me think it was okay for legislators to tell local governments how to zone. And so I don't, I'll be doing my best in the Senate to at least modify it so that it's not as harmful, but it's got a lot, those bills have a lot of momentum.
If it should move forward, is there any way to make a distinction for group places like Bainbridge that are defined as cities but really aren't? And I know it says population, but that just is so misleading.
Yeah, I've been trying to get the sponsors to just limit it to Snohomish, Pierce, and King and let them deal with it since those, they want it. But I don't know if, Eastern Washington wants it because they don't like growth management. So it's just kind of a mess right now. What I do know, and what I did tell the governor this, is nobody's comprehensive plans, nobody's growth management plans will be in compliance once you do this. And so everything will go to court, everything, because nobody can comply with providing sewer and water and roads and schools for 4 times more people than you planned for. And all the local governments are going to have to plan for doubling, tripling, quadrupling their density, and you just can't do it. So if they pass it, the whole Growth Management Act has to be brought up. It's a lot bigger than it. The impacts are a lot bigger than what the proponents are talking about.
What role can the health department play in this? Do they not have also some control over zoning, or I'm not sure zoning is the right word, but housing density and everything?
They just have to, if you can't build a septic, that's like a very practical thing that somebody from Bainbridge Island would know about, but you have to have room for your septic system, right? If you're not on sewer. And so if suddenly you won't be able to get your permits really for 4 houses for 4 houses and a half an acre or an acre, because you can't fit the septic for that affordably. So it requires a lot of work.
Caroline, we had another question.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up on this as far as the cost impact. That would be included in the bill. It surprises me that it's moved this fast, because it seems like it's a very expensive thing to do, but is it because all of this lands on the municipalities?
Yeah.
That stinks. That's awful. Okay.
Well, and it has some fiscal note. It's like, I don't know, $40 million to help everybody plan. But that's
how can they figure out how much it is?
Bainbridge Island is going to pay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of kidding, but it's going to be a lot more money than $40 million. I haven't talked to local government yet about what they think the impacts are.
What I understand on Bainbridge, for those of you who haven't followed it, is if this were truly put in place, it would authorize 440,000 more houses on Bainbridge, or more living units on Bainbridge.
But our city manager is sending a letter. For what it's worth, he's sending a letter. So
yeah, we have gotten correspondence. yeah, the trick to it is that everybody wants affordable housing. And so this is one tool. We did for people that are concerned and think we're not doing enough, we passed a really aggressive, revolutionary, and I guess progressive too, bill last year, just in May. It just got signed by the governor on affordable housing and related to land use zoning and density, incentives to increase density and do accessory dwelling units in people's yards. That was actually a really big bill, and the local governments haven't even started implementing that bill yet. So my warning to the proponents was, my caution was, let's see how last year's big idea works, and then we come back and ram this down the city's throats if they don't comply with last year.
You know what the bill number is for that piece of legislation that passed last year?
Oof, I can look it up. Or Jennifer, are you still here? It was I want to say it was 1220, but it was I think it was a Doer bill, Jennifer, if you could look up Doer, D-U-E-R-R.
Great. And then Catherine, you had another question?
Well, I was just going to follow up on this. There's nothing in this bill that will force it to be affordable housing
No.
as a result of this rezoning.
No, I've been, Catherine, I've been sending the housing chair real estate screenshots from Zillow of the dense zoning on Bainbridge and how much it sells for.
Yeah, well, and that's the problem. And I don't know if the state needs to do something on this or whether it's up to local jurisdictions, but we moved here from Virginia. And in Virginia, whatever a developer built had to have X number of affordable housing in that development. They were told they had to have it. And we actually, as a Navy family, moved into one of those affordable housing houses in our cul-de-sac. Everybody else had a big 2-story house and we had a 1-story walk up. And it was great for us at the time because it was affordable. But nothing in this bill says you have to require developers who are developing all this new area to have affordable housing.
I think that the bill that we passed last year that Jennifer's looking up, and if she can't find it, I can do a little searching in my email. Did you find it, Jennifer?
I'm looking up her list of bills from the last biennium, and all the ones I'm checking weren't signed into law. So I don't mean to out, I don't mean to out another member for introducing a bunch of bills that didn't make it into law, but so far I'm not finding it. So
All right. Well,
members, I'm happy to keep checking around.
If you go into the housing advocacy organization and look at their report from last session. What I was going to say about that is that bill requires the local governments to do stuff like you're saying, come up with ordinances that promote affordable housing. The state gave them money to do that planning process. So they have the funds to hire a planner and go through the public participation part of it. But that bill, the bill from last year directs them to look at their zoning codes and put in stuff. And it even included like, there's a word for it, but essentially look at gentrification. Like if you're increasing zoning and you're losing single family houses, you're losing neighborhoods. So what do you do with displacement, for example? So it was very in-depth, well thought through bill last year.
I think so. I think that's all we have. Oh, Caroline, you had another question?
I just had a very basic question about communication. You mentioned early on sending an email to you, and that's one way to communicate. And we can also go on the legislative website and comment on specific bills. What is your preference if given an option to have an email about a bill or to comment on the legislative site?
I prefer getting the email.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
I'll skim through the comments just to get a flavor of what people have to say and catch whether there's something I hadn't thought of.
Mhm.
But that doesn't tell me what people I represent are thinking.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Carrie West had a question or comment?
No, she said she didn't have a question.
Oh, okay.
Raise your hand. Yeah. I think Anita raised her hand next.
Hi, I'm Anita Rose, and I'm a part of our Climate Solutions Committee for Kitsap. And so I highly recommend that you endorse Senate Bill 5722, and that's reducing greenhouse gases emissions in buildings. Because greenhouse gas releases from buildings, primarily through their heating systems, is second only to transportation in Washington. And it's a step toward adjusting building codes to design more new buildings, including multifamily housing, to incorporate more carbon-free energy sources. So, and that's going to come up on February 2nd. I also would ask that you really look closely at 5744. And those are tax deferrals for investment projects in clean technology, manufacturing, and clean alternatives for fuel production. I just got through reading Bill Gates's How to Avert a Climate Disaster. And one of the things he pointed out was that, in autocratic countries, for China or countries that have long-range planning, they tend to use the R&D for the development and stuff. They have long-term plans for that. But here in the United States, we have every 4 years, it's whiplash. And so we're going to be sending really good manufacturing companies and R&D investments to other countries, and they'll make their money in those other countries because they can't get more than 4 years of coverage because of different administrations. So we really need to think long-term and invest long-term in that one.
So I need a specific bill that you're thinking of?
Yes, it's SB 5744.
Okay, thank you.
And then finally, SB 5842, and those are state laws that address climate change. And so it contains clarifications, refinements, and additional elements for the Cap and Invest program. And it's summarized in the Senate bill report. So we just don't have the time to lose in doing our part to limit the climate change and economic reactions and technologies. We need to really clean up our act and fine tune it. And that's what that bill is hoping to do.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Is it Caroline next?
No, she's all good. It's Lenny.
Lenny?
I wanted to follow up on a couple of league bills. We were lobbying last week, so this is all very much in our minds. And both of these are actually coming to Ways and Means. This week. They passed last week, the 27th. One is 5597. It's some enhancements to the Voting Rights Act. And is particularly useful as I was reading it today. It allows those counties where there's violations of the Voting Rights Act because there are 3 commissioners. It permits them to go to 5, which I think right now is a little more cumbersome. So this bill would work on that, and you'll be seeing it come across Ways and Means probably this week, since it was referred to Ways and Means. And then the other one is one that the league is real excited about. I must confess, I have mixed emotions. It's 5584, which is the local options bill for ranked choice voting.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the cool thing about that is it's a local option. And I think it would be interesting to see how ranked choice voting will work. We've played with it. We last year for our program planning, those of you who participated last year in the league, KidSEP leagues, we did ranked choice voting on choosing some priorities. So it was kind of fun. And then lastly, when we met with Representative Hansen last Thursday, he said to put in a plug for his bill that's coming your way. It's 1835, Jennifer, and he's going to make sure it gets out of House appropriations. It's his bill to create more ways to help families fill out those financial aid forms, those lovely federal and state.
Yeah, the FAFSA.
Yeah, and it's one of the cool pieces of it is they're looking, the reason it's in appropriations and it will eventually come to you is it does need some money because they're talking about a partnership with the libraries to make libraries a resource to local families, which I think is a great idea. So anyway, he asked us to put a plug in with you when that comes your way to.
I'm rolling my eyes because my seatmate does not need to lobby me. Through the League of Women Voters, no less. I'm texting him immediately.
Yeah, well, he was pretty funny. He was missing lunch to meet with us.
Well, I think we should say thank you so much, and you have been probably missing dinner, and so we appreciate all of your time with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
and
so
your
much.
insights.
Yes.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thanks for your work. Is that it, Delight?
Well, mine is gone. Colette?
Yep, we're all good.
Okay. Jennifer and I found the bill, the housing bill, for whoever was interested in following that. It was last year, Representative Peterson from Edmonds, 1022.
1022. Thank you.
Oh, and I have just one more. Is she still there? Yeah, you're still there. This is Anita again. And Senate Bill 5543 has a deal for a zero emission landscaping equipment transition.
Oh, yeah.
And my husband just read something and pointed it out to me that your two-stroke engines, your gas engines, the leaf blowers and such are 300 times, they give off 300 times the pollutants of automobiles, the average car. So certainly something to look at.
Yeah, those leaf blowers, not only are they loud, but they're horrible for the environment. Yeah.
And so this will have rebates for new electrical power equipment. And I think that's a wonderful idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for that. Thank you all for the input, for identifying bills.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Again,
Bye.
thank you for your
Good
time.
evening.
And
Bye,
I
thank
think we're
you.
going to end now. Colette?
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.